So now I'm okay. So our meeting is now streaming live on Facebook.
Yeah.
We made it. Okay. So this is the OAC having an artist conversation with Dr. Sara Witty. And let's see. I already forgot what I was going to talk about. Oh, yeah. And this week I found this amazing bottle of Juggernaut Cabernet, which reminded me of Sara Witty's artwork, specifically from the label.
Just a good tale.
Yeah. Look at that tail. Look at that tail. Also, we have the amazing Jackie Platt with us, who will in the future, very shortly, will be starting to do her own live streaming, which is going to be artist businesses and artist opportunities with people in the Twin Cities. So if you know anybody, we're going to start doing that. Nice. And then, let's see. I think it's probably time that you introduce yourself.
Okay. I am Dr. Sara Witty. I was told that I have to say what kind of artist I am, which is a little daunting because evidently I do everything except sculpt. I cannot sculpt and I cannot make jewelry. But I am primarily a painter, an acrylic painter. So that's an acrylic painting, that. A tattoo artist, and a bookbinder. Did I miss any? I think that's it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you could make sculpture. What do you mean you don't make sculpture?
I can't. If it's just a surface.
Make your dollhouse.
I know, but if it's bas relief, I can do it. Is it a texture? I'm in. Is it like a head, like all the way around? No.
But I mean, think about all of the things that you layer on your painting and stuff, and you have so much anatomy behind you. I don't believe you.
You should. I can't name names, but I will say that at one point in my life, I decided to sculpt the perfect tree. And I did not do this sober. And the next day, a friend of mine came to my house and he was like, "What the hell is that?" And it was the tree. I went to bed thinking it looked just like a tree. It did not. And a tree is just a tree, man. Like, yeah, it was not good. I can sort of stumble through, but like, no, it's not good.
Well, okay, with like all your amazing talents and all the hard work that you do in all the other areas, I think having a free pass in one medium.
Yeah, I'm totally cool with it. I also, you guys, almost failed a 3D class when I was in college. What? Yeah, because I was so bad at it that the professor didn't believe that I tried. And I tried so hard. I was trying to make like a Brancusi style, like abstract pretty thing. And it was so ugly and it was so bad. And she was like, I can't, but you didn't try. And I was like, I really, like I was in here all the time. And she was like, you can't be serious. And I was like, yeah, I am.
That is harsh. That is like, from all the art classes I have ever been in, I will say that is probably one of the harder things to hear, like as an artist, like you didn't even try.
Didn't even try. Well, and then when I tried to be a jeweler's apprentice at one point, because one of my painting professors, her husband was a jeweler and he made his own jewelry. So he designed it. He didn't just set stones. He designed like the whole, ring or bracelet. And then he set stones. And so he asked me if I wanted to do an apprenticeship and I said yes. And so I started the apprenticeship and I lasted about 3 weeks until he was like, "I'm so sorry, but you're so bad at this that you can't. I need an actual apprentice." I made it about 3 weeks, almost a whole month before he was like, "You're a nice person. You need to go."
So, okay, will you just like go over, because like the more I do this, the more that I'm like, oh my God, artists have lived 1,000 lives. Like we seem to try and do and investigate and be curious about so many things. So can you talk about where your journey has started as an artist and how many paths you have taken?
Yeah, sure. I started out as a studio artist, as a painter. And my undergraduate degree was actually in photography. So I did a lot of like black and white Joel Peter Wiccan style posed photography. I didn't do any, you know, street photography. And I really liked that pose stuff because then I could come up with like the weird kind of things I do in paintings, but I didn't have to like put in so much work to make it look real. So I did photography. And at that point, I realized that if I'm going to let photography be the medium that represents, you know, real bodies, real spaces, then painting can move into more of an abstract for me. So I did that.
Sorry about Jaxie. I'm gonna mute herself.
She's just excited. Okay. Then I was out of school for a while, and I went back to MCAD for just a year for a post-baccalaureate because I'd been out of school for a while. And I realized that I didn't learn as much from studio art as I did from art history. And so if I wanted to be a painter, I thought I could learn a lot from studying art history. So what I did was I went and got a master's in art history. But about a year in, I realized that I didn't want to study as an art historian. I didn't want to study painting. I ended up studying architecture. So then I went and got a PhD in art history and architectural history. And my minor for my PhD is social psych and psychology. And then I was practicing as an artist while I was doing my PhD, but I mostly worked digitally then because I didn't have a lot of room for a studio. So then when I had room again, I started working really large scale painting. And I had worked as a tattoo artist many, many, many years ago in my undergrad. So when I was like 19, I worked in a shop for 2 years while I was going to college. And after I finished my PhD, I realized that adjunct professors don't really make a lot of money. So while I was finishing my dissertation, I quit teaching and went back to tattooing. And I finished my dissertation, I finished my PhD, but I just kept being a tattoo artist. And I still do academic work as an editor, but I don't teach.
Just a bummer because I would totally be your student. But so like going into tattooing, I mean, like most people, that is also their career too. So like it was kind of like, so you were having like 5 careers at the same time.
Yes. Well, because I found that I how do I explain this? So if I cared about a thing, like if I thought a thing, like an activity was the thing that defined me, I would panic about whether or not I was going to be able to do it well, if that makes sense. But I found that when I was doing my PhD work, I cared about artwork so much because the pressure was off of me to be like the best artist ever, because I was studying to be an art historian and an architectural historian. So it gave me all this freedom to do all these weird things that I probably wouldn't have done if art was the only thing in my life, because I'd kind of like panic about it. I also get real bored real fast. I mean, I almost never keep a job for more than 5 years because it's not fun. I need to do different things with my brain. My brain needs to jump around and then I feel better.
So because like when you were explaining to me like what you were getting your doctorate in, and like because I'm slow and I have to ask 500 questions, and I was like, architectural art history with a minor in psychology, which what you went and did is studied mental health facilities.
Yes. Yeah, which is why I studied social psych and psych.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
About the hospitals. Well, that's how I got sucked into architectural history. Is I originally, as an art historian, I was going to study manuscripts because I had this deep burning desire to get into the Vatican archives. And the only way you can get into the Vatican archives is if you have approved research, like as a normal person to get in. So I was like, okay, I'm going to study manuscripts and then I'm going to pick all the ones in the Vatican archives and then they're going to have to let me in. It's going to be so cool. And And it's such a good, mature way to like plan out your life, right? Is like, my goal is to be in the Vatican archives. And this was before the Da Vinci Code came out. So when that movie came, like that book came out, I was so pissed. Like, I hate Dan Brown so much. But that is like a whole different thing. Anyway, so I had to take an architectural history course, and I had no idea what to study or what to research just for this one class. And someone, my friend Christine actually said to me, she was like, well, I think you should study mental hospitals. And because we were talking about, because I was really into Batman. I mean, I still am, but she was like, what about mental hospitals? That would seem to fit you. And I was like, girl, life changing advice. Like, that's, and I studied a very large mental hospital in England called Colney Hatch, which is now a very large and very fancy apartment complex. Of course, because it's really big, it's perfect for that. And then I wrote both my master's is the straight architectural history of one of the Minnesota hospitals, and my dissertation is about the contrast between the social construction of mental illness, so like what you see in movies and Batman and stuff like that, that in contrast to the actual procedures and day-to-day living and like design of a mental hospital.
So now it's my turn to tell the story that you told me.
Yeah.
Of this piece that like always blows my mind. And then you correct me when I ask about things, because I love watching horror movies.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so the movie that I was watching was The Conjuring. And there's a scene, and I'm going to try and do this without spoilers, but there's a scene that's like in between the walls, like a figure drops.
Yeah.
And like there's whole humans that are crawling around.
Yeah.
And like, being a homeowner, I was like, every time I see that in horror movies, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I have to pay a ton of money to insulate like 3 inches of wall thickness. There's no way that people are like in there, like stretching out, running down, the ghosts are gonna get me, you know?
Yeah.
And then you corrected me. And do you remember what you told me about this?
Oh yeah, like in old houses, they like, it depends on like what area you're talking. I mean, we're talking like old.
So you started talking about Victorian mental health facility and like how large the ducts were.
Yeah, they were huge. Yeah, so you had in the hospital that I studied, there was, I think we're talking like no, it's about 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet in between the walls, because then they didn't have, vents like we do. We didn't have like furnaces. So they used these giant holes between the walls to push air up to different levels. And you could totally fit a whole fucking person up and down those things. I mean, like you could be running around inside the walls of these buildings. No. Crazy.
I didn't realize that, of course people who make horror movies, they do their research and they're like, oh yes, actually this is a real thing. We can crawl up underneath your house. We will get you. Not an issue. Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. It might it might be a little bit more crap, but like when I did my on-site research at the mental hospital, they had in almost every mental hospital, but it was particularly in places like Minnesota that are very cold, they have a tunnel system underneath the hospital, because they don't want to walk from one building to the next building to the next building through like patient populations. So they build these tunnel systems and they run to all the different buildings. So like the Colney Hatch that I originally studied has 5 miles of tunnel system under it. Yeah. And the hospital that I studied, there were buildings that they tore down that they didn't totally fill in their basements. So you could get to the basement through the tunnel system.
Crawl up into your house that way.
Yep, that's what they're doing. They are actually going to crawl up into my house, into all the pieces, and
your bedroom's in the basement, so you're gonna die first.
I'm dead.
Well, you see, like in like small towns, people's individual houses were connected to the like pipe systems of the city through their basement. So when you would go down, you'd get to like a cistern hole. You could usually find like, I don't know, like a 3-foot thing where you could get into the public tunnel system and you could actually pop up in other people's houses if they hadn't built over those connections.
What? So then not only is the Conjuring ghost gonna get me, then also Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are gonna
and also your neighbor. They're gonna get, like, the Conjuring ghost is like, I'm gonna fuck with you, but then I'm going over to your neighbor's house. And
right.
And then your neighbor, but these are like houses that are built, you know, like 1860s. So if your house is like from the 1920s, that's not a thing. But if you, like in my hometown in St. Peter, a friend of mine had a very old house and they still had like this big cistern hole, and they hadn't completely blocked it up just in case they needed to get to it. And it had like a little window and you could look into the room. And if you went into the room and then you went down, you could get into the system. So, I mean, most people don't know that, but it's like an actual thing.
So these are like the things that Dr. Sara Witty and I talk about all the time, because like I will go and watch something, and recently I sent her something about wallpaper because I've been obsessed with watching like wallpaper in horror movies.
That was like the greatest revelation you've ever had.
Yeah, like it's well, you know, I hope that there's other great revelations that I have, but this was one where it's like during this pandemic, horror movies have been pretty great. Also, like I'm obsessed with zombie movies at the moment.
Nice.
But before I get into, because we really want to have Dr. Sara Witty like art historian time with these live streams that we have, because you know we might be doing this for a while. You know, we don't know what the new normal is, which is like, that's not a fun way of saying, but the new adaptability that we will have.
Totally. Yeah, so I have like a bit of a horror about that, and I just realized what that was. So when I was teaching, I mean, this is different because people would be watching because they are interested, not because they have to take a class. But I have a habit of making hyperbolic jokes in the middle of my like class lectures, and my students would think I was serious. So at one point I was teaching them formal analysis, which is like, this painting has a blue figure. You'll notice that the background is gold. And then in the front, there's an orange box. I mean, formal analysis is just, what does it look like? And then you get to like the secondary part, which is, what do you think it maybe means based on what it looks like? Well, I once told a bunch of kids that a Renaissance painting cloud looked like a pig in a hat. That's my example of like, be creative in how you like approach this. And every single one of them wrote in their class paper about a pig in a hat. And that analysis was.
That was totally a Renaissance thing. My teacher told me.
Totally. Yes. And so they were like, they all believed that like, you know, like this Renaissance, this late Ren painting was like a pig in a hat was like the thing that defined the cloud design of late Ren painting. And I was like, oh, fuck.
Sarah, you're supposed to use your powers for good.
I know.
Make everybody think that it's a pig in a hat.
I know. And I was like,
it's just chaotic. It's not evil.
No, it's definitely chaotic neutral. Like
totally.
So every time you look at like a Renaissance painting, please look in the clouds and search for the pig in a hat, because I've heard that that's what's in there. So I had to like teach myself not to make jokes because students would think I was serious. So if we do this, I have to like, there'll be a disclaimer, which is like, most of this is accurate. Some of it's just fucking made up shit that she thinks is funny.
I do think that it you know, we could even say that it's bad art history with Dr. Sara Witty, or we could say 80% of this is untrue art history with Dr. Sara Witty.
I think that's much more interesting, or because I mean, like we talk about a lot in art history, but it's even more relevant now, is like how we write history affects how people think reality is built. And so like it would be super funny to go through and be like, look at this fucking shitty ass painting by Caravaggio. Doesn't he suck? He's the worst. I mean, instead of saying like, you know, this white guy who is also a murderer. I mean, I'm sure he was pretty brownish. He's Italian, but like he's like a murderer on the run, and everyone's like, he's a genius. Fucking monster. That's what art history should be.
You know, well, I'm gonna just put it this way, is that I have the Zoom account.
Right?
Gotta use it.
I'm only using it 1 day a week for
Yeah,
like an hour.
I feel like Hannah Gadsby stole like all of my joke material for art history. I mean, she really beat me to the punch on that one.
You know, you can just come up with your own.
I can do that. And then I'll send her a letter and be like, I love you so much. Can I please be your friend? It won't be weird. It'll be fine.
Let's talk about, besides like all the amazing art history and everything, let's start talking about like your artwork that you work on. And I want you to talk about your 1.5 year long project that you did.
Okay, the 365.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start. So the 365 was more of a technical thing, so I'll talk about that second. I'll talk this is where like my academic work and my artwork actually goes together, which is I'm always interested in making people uncomfortable and not in a easily recognizable way. So like my favorite horror movies, for example, are very upsetting, but you don't know why. I like House of Voices. I like French horror a lot because you never know what the hell is happening. I don't like gore, but you'll notice in almost all of my paintings, there's like a reference to body horror. And that's because I think a lot about aspects of identity, how your self is manifested through your body and your physical being, how you present to the world versus how you think about yourself on the inside. And a lot of that is tied to the critical theory that I study to talk about mental hospitals and to talk about, built environments in general. So I don't think of houses, for example, or even gas stations as being innocent spaces. They are, to me, constructed based on the ways we shape identity. And so almost all of my artwork's about that too. I do a lot of technical work just to practice, because in tattooing, you don't get to do a lot of straight your own work. You are doing things like, jellyfish.
Jellyfish.
80% of this is actually you, though.
Yes. No, totally.
This is, the drawing. Yep. And then this is all you just being like, we're going to do this today.
Totally. And that's because like, that's so much more fun for me when I get to like bring in like my aesthetic about like, I like things that swirl, things that are confusing, things that are a little bit like visually, like, I don't know what's happening. And then I like to cut people into parts that are human versus inhuman. So like that painting that's directly behind me, can you see it? Is it light enough?
Got a little bit of a glare on it, but you can get most of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly a hand. It's not meant to feel human, nor is this one. So even when they're people, they're mostly deconstructed, and that's sort of connected to my knowledge of art history of how if you take away a face, it's easier for people to picture themselves as the person they're looking at. So that's what my artwork usually is exploring, is identity, the clash between the presentation of the self and the experience of the self. But for technical stuff, the 365 project, which is something I did. So when I was in grad school, I lived in a 300 square foot box. It was tiny, by myself, and it was a very monkish life. I mean, I didn't see people very often, except in classes. Classwork at a PhD level is pretty intense. You do a lot of writing, like hundreds of pages of writing. But at the same time, I did a 365 project where I did a drawing every single day, and I did it for 1.5 years. So it went, almost to the full 2 years, but didn't quite make it. But while I was doing that, because my space was so small, I worked entirely digitally, and I learned a lot about color theory. So when you're broke and you're a painter, you don't want to waste paint, right? So you buy like maybe 4 colors and then you mix them. Or if you get real crazy, you're like, oh, look at this one green over here, right? But you're like, I don't want to fuck it up because it's so expensive. But with digital artwork, you never have to worry about that because it's free. Once you have the means to do the digital artwork, you don't have to pay for color. And so I just pretty much messed around with color for a year and a half, doing like just illustration style comic book ish stuff. And some of the drawings are horrendous because I did them in like 5 minutes because that was the rule. You just had to do one drawing every day. Didn't say how good they had to be. So most of them are like super quick drawings. That's really nice too because it forces you not to like obsess about like, this is deep artwork and I'm having thoughts. It was literally like, I saw a girl with a cute hat on the bus, draw her. That kind of thing.
So when you were doing the 365, like how many times were you like, maybe just not today, or I might give up, or I have to do their homework? You just did it. You just made it a priority every single day.
I did. But it was easy because like I said, the graduate work is a lot like being a monk. You don't have a lot of what we feel like every day as like a push and pull kind of, social calling, like I have to see this person. Maybe I'm going to have dinner with this person. Maybe I'll go for a walk. In grad school, you don't have time. So you are very, very isolated and you get into this working space where you just kind of hunker down. And so for me, the drawings were my break. So every day I would work all day and I'd have dinner and I was allowed to watch one episode of television every day. And I watched it while I ate dinner. And then when I was done with dinner, I drew for about 2 hours and then I went to bed. That was pretty much every day.
So one thing that I see and like I question myself and like, is when you're an artist, is going to school important?
God, that's a really hard question. I was going to just say,
right.
Yeah, I was just going to say like offhand, like absolutely not.
Because from what I can see, and this is just observation, is that like in some ways, like structure is very good for a lot of people.
Yes.
Like you're saying that like socially, like maybe I don't have to go and see this person for dinner or whatever, because you have to go to a class or you have homework and it's a different type of obligation.
Right.
But, I also went to MCAT and, I think many MCATians will be like, I have a love-hate relationship with the college that I went to. And then there's a lot of artists that like, they may not have formal backgrounds, but they have worked very hard to get where they are. And it's like, they're like, I started going back to school this last year. That was more for myself because like I wanted some structure and I wanted to like, have something where I could like talk and work through it and stuff. And like, but even though I still question whether or not it is important to me as an artist or if it is the social construct that makes me go.
No, I don't think it's the latter. I mean, I think it's important for people to have, this is one of those weird 50-50 answers where I think it's important for people to have formal training. I don't think, just like I think it would be weird if you were a musician and you didn't know some of the history of music. I think it's bizarre if people are artists and they don't know some of the basics of, just 2D design, composition. But some people can learn to do that on their own, of course. But not a lot of us. I mean, a lot of us need someone to tell us what we don't know, because you can spend most of your life thinking you know what you're supposed to do, and 5 minutes with an expert and you're like, oh shit, I didn't even know that was a thing. You know what I mean? I mean, it just speeds up the process of like knowledge base. It has no effect on like talent. But part of that too is the theory of, it's called the theory of self-efficacy, which is some people are much better at failing and then seeing that failure as a learning experience and then keeping working. And some people don't have that self-efficacy and they can't do that. So they need a system that keeps them sort of moving. I just kind of happen to have both a monkish approach to life and high self-efficacy. So like when you tell me I'm going to stick you in a box for 2 years and make you read hundreds of books, I'm like, woo, okay. But I don't think that I would have the knowledge base or the skill base that I have without the formal education, because I wouldn't have known where to start.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It absolutely makes sense. And like I said, it's just one of those, people become artists their entire lives, and some of them don't actually admit they're being an artist until a point in their life.
Yeah, well, you and I have talked about that a little bit, where people worry about whether or not they deserve that title, and whether or not they deserve to say it out loud. Like, every single asshole on the planet is fine with being like, I'm a poet. You've met a person who like hesitated with I'm a poet, right? But like, if you talk to somebody who has like immense skill in visual art, they will almost always be like, I make things. You know, like, I made a painting once or twice or 1,000 times. But if you're like, well, are you an artist? They're like, oh, I don't know about that.
Why?
I don't know. I actually think it's art.
I'm not an artist.
Okay, Jackie says it's imposter syndrome.
I'm not an artist.
Yes,
right?
you are.
Oh, I'm not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not.
No, you totally are.
I'm not.
You're gonna play this game all day.
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna have like crazy crabman hands and like because that's I mean, I think it's part imposter syndrome, but it's also part art history's fault. Art history told people that if you're not dead, Italian, and a dude, you're not an artist. And then they were like, oh, wait, but there's modern art. So unless you're white, straight, and a man, you're not an artist. You know, I mean, art history did this shit to us. It's its fault.
So then probably the first, it's probably like going to AA. The first step is admitting it, right? So we just have to sit there and be like, I am an artist.
Yeah.
I am an artist. Right. Well, and I think like part of it is we have to like take away like how important that word is. If Mary Oliver can claim to be a poet, all of us are fucking artists.
So like, but like that's also another thing is that like one time I was at a party and I get really annoyed when people ask me what I do.
Right.
Because I feel that is the easiest way in American culture to figure out what class I am.
Absolutely. That's why only in America do people ask that fucking question.
Because you could be a millionaire in t-shirts and jeans. You know what I mean? Like, there's not a good indication of who or what you are in our class system without being like, what do you do?
Right. How do you make your money so I can figure out how much of it you have?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you say, I'm an artist.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden, it's like you end up being this outlier that confuses people.
Well, because not only are you probably poor, but they also think you're probably delusional. Because they've bought into that whole, like, to be an artist, you have to be in galleries and your paintings have to sell for $1 million. And like, somebody's got to be writing articles about how brilliant you are or what. No, man, you could draw stick figures your whole life. You're an artist.
Sorry, that's puppy.
Puppy.
And there are comics that exist now that are stick figures.
Yes. Yeah.
Great
one, yeah.
And some of that is
there's more than one.
Is what? Marketing, movement, communication, networking. Like there's a lot of other things when you say I am an artist.
Right.
You are like a small business.
Yeah.
You are your own social media. You are, like you are your manager. You are like so many different things that like could go into a giant laundry list. And it's
yes, especially if you I think there's not a difference, but you can be I can't figure out how to phrase it, because you can be a professional artist in the sense that this is how you make your money, or you can be a devotional artist, or you can be both. You can be both of those things. But like a devotional artist doesn't care if they're any good. They just have to. Do you know? And I think that's most people, is they sit down and they know, they're like, God, this sucks. Like I remember reading when I studied art history about the painter Modigliani, who lost his shit in a public cafe because Picasso didn't know who he was. And so he went home and he took every single piece of artwork out of his flat and burned it.
Jesus.
Yeah. And I read that and I was like, I feel that so hard, Modigliani. Not the Picasso part, but the burn it all part. Like just, I have. But then, like every single artist has done the thing where they're like, I suck, I quit, I'm done. And 10 minutes later, they're like, oh, fuck, now I have an idea. And then they go and they start making that idea, right? Because they're devotional. They can't fucking stop. They're like, I'm the worst. Fuck, I still have to. So.
But you did it. You did a year and a half, and you still make artwork every day, don't you?
Yes.
Every single day.
Yes. Yeah.
And if it's not painting, it's drawing, it's writing, which I don't think that many people know this, but you wrote a book.
I did. I did. Oh, that was the other thing I did during my PhD was I was busy doing my research, and I was like, I really hate footnotes. I want to write anything without footnotes. And so I wrote a novel in like 3 weeks. It was horrible, guys. I mean, it was a burning pile of shit, but I fixed it and now it's pretty good. But I mean, I was just like, I can't handle it anymore. And then I just sat down and wrote this terrible novel and just got it out of me. And then I was like, okay, now I'll write my dissertation.
And you also had, like, at least you told me that you were considering possibly turning that into a play, which is also like an installation piece.
Yes, and so I've been thinking about doing that for a long time with that particular work, because it incorporates a lot of like the themes of stuff I'm interested in, like selfhood and architecture, and how architecture is tied to that. And they always talk about, you should write about what you know. So what I know the most about is architecture. So I basically wrote a giant novel about a haunted hotel. I mean, which, is basically the plot of The Shining. If the hotel I was writing about still existed, but it's been torn down. So it's very creative, you guys. So the best thing ever. No, well, and like that project, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like if you're working on an art piece and you kind of, you think it's finished, so you put it against the wall and you walk away. That's kind of what I did with that project, is so I could write other things. I kind of set it against the wall, and now I write every day for about an hour, but none of that's not always fiction. That's usually just writing, just journal stuff.
Can you show some of your journals?
I can. Yeah. I have come prepared.
Yes.
Okay. So we're starting out with like an old one. This is like an old, just straight leather.
And you make those?
Yes. So, and they're long stitch bound, which is, if you knew anything about bookbinding, you know, literally the laziest, least talented way to bind a book. Like you just like wrap it through and like tie it off. It doesn't have to like sew together. Bookbinding is a very complicated art. I don't do any of the complicated part. So then like, yeah, the journals usually they have like drawings and stuff like this. This is an old one, so my handwriting is a fairly decent size. It looks pretty small, but
it's tiny from what I can see.
I know, but if we look at this was at the Unicorn Art Show. This is my current journal. It's actually about to be my ex journal, but it usually, so story time, boys and girls, open up. So I do a lot of page cutting. So you can see there are like windows and stuff. And little fishes. They're fishes. Look at those fishes.
Oh, they're beautiful.
And then, oh, hey. Oh, that's a different unicorn. It just went past your unicorn.
Hey.
There it is.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey.
That's
I got that on my leg. What?
Show it off. Yeah. So that's what I usually do, that kind of writing. And then I like harvest that writing for fiction. The same way like a memoirist kind of like goes through and they harvest journal entries for that sort of stuff. But my favorite journal, which is sad because it's a pretty old one, this one's made of glass.
What?
Ooh.
Yeah, it's mosaic glass.
Oh, mosaic on the front. Oh, okay, cool.
And then the
ooh, shiny.
Yeah, it's heavy as shit. It's like 50 pounds. It weighs so much. I almost dropped it, like taking it down from the shelf. But yeah, so then I have like, let me see. So like little fold outs and stuff.
Mm.
The hand from a mental hospital.
Ooh.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's what my bookbinding kind of, how that whole thing works. But yeah. Weirdly, I never draw my own stories. If I write something, I don't draw it.
But then you still have illustrations in there, but they're not tied to
the characters. They're almost always tied to the architecture.
So if someone picked up your journals like 50 years from now, they'd be reading something, and then like the picture of the two guys in the tree, which was the first page you flipped to, that correlation actually doesn't exist.
No, not at all. That was like a sketch from not Endgame, Waiting for Godot. And I was watching Waiting for Godot, and I sketched that, and then like on that page there might be a story about going to the grocery store. They don't go together at all.
I'm gonna bring up your Instagram really quick.
Okay.
Get it going. That's not your Instagram. This is your Instagram.
Yeah.
The bird.
And I realized that like this was using your tattoo, your artwork, and yourself as well. These are all the pieces that are there. The first one is a piece that you did for the Unicorn Art Show 2.
Yep.
And that one was featured in the city pages. It's gorgeous. It's huge. I believe, did you say that you found that frame in a thrift store? Was that the one?
No, a friend of mine, his family's cabin had this really hideous painting of horses. I mean, it was so ugly, and it was 3 horses. And he said, "Do you want this?" And he sent me a picture of it. And I said, "Oh my goodness, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Yes, please bring it to me." And then I painted over. So there are like horse head, like normal. Well, they weren't normal because they looked like they were painted by maybe a 5th grader. So there were horses under there, but I was like, I'm going to use that for the unicorn show. So we should have done a before and after picture because it was
that would have been funny.
It was really amusing. Yeah.
If you want to talk about anything, let me know, but I would like you to at least talk about this one, which that one was for the Unicorn Art Show.
Yep.
But goddamn, that tail, that dark rainbow on that tail, I said goddamn.
Goddamn, I say goddamn. I was excited about that tail.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had this idea, which was I'm going to do a painting that's insanely dark and it just has highlights in brief places, and it'll save me all this time because it'll be mostly dark. And it turns out that's bullshit because it actually took more time. But I figured out, I was like, how am I going to make this iridescent tail? And what I did was I painted in the tail completely black, and then I painted grayscale highlights on the tail. And then I did pure color over that. So instead of, mixing any of the colors with white, I just did a grayscale and then did pure color over the top. And I was so excited that worked because I was halfway through it and I was like, if this doesn't work, I don't know how this tail is going to come together. And it did, which I was super excited about.
Talk about your the acrylic flow art.
The pour paintings.
Yeah, those are so pretty.
Yeah, that piece now has like a huge bunch of glitter on it, so it's even shinier.
Yes.
I got really into pour painting about a year and a half ago. My sister passed away, and I don't know about y'all, but it turns out when you're real sad, it's hard to draw images. I just got like, I would say, you know, as an artist, you stare at a blank thing and you're like, oh, I can see it, and then you draw it. That kind of just went away. Like my brain was like, hey, you know how sad you are? You don't get to do that shit anymore. And I was like, but I still gotta make stuff. Like that's how I function. And so I ended up looking at a bunch of YouTube videos about how to do acrylic pours. And it's just so fun.
Yeah.
That now my studio permanently has a canvas, like a canvas cover on the floor and a pour table, because every once in a while I just pour a bunch of crap and then stick it in the corner because it's so fun. It's so fun. And there's my beautiful dog. I mean, look at that Christmas photo. Yeah, that. And they look very different when they're wet than when they dry, which is a little bit of a learning curve, because you'll think that you've done something pretty amazing. That one, the pink and orange one, is probably my favorite.
So gorgeous.
It's about 5 by 4, so it's 5 feet wide and 4 feet tall.
And how long did it take to dry?
That one is that was seven solo cups full of wet paint dumped on that. And it took about 2.5 weeks to dry. And so it just sat in the studio, and I would come downstairs and I'd peek in on it and I'd be like, you done drying? And like, I am not, don't touch me. And I would just go, okay. And so I had to set up a drying rack system in my laundry room. But this painting was too big to pick up and move without, turning it to the side, and everything would have run off of it. So I just had to work around it for the next, 2.5 weeks or something.
And you do have your tattoo work on here now, but you are no longer going to be tattooing in the future.
No, I'm gonna take a small break. I plan to do maybe, get into doing conventions before the COVID's got us. I was talking to a couple people who own shops in Minneapolis about perhaps doing guest spots there. And so, I'm looking forward to doing, some specialty work, but maybe taking a small break. Oh, look at Jackie. The Jackie body parts. The Dark Tower tattoo. It's like, yes, all the greatness.
These are digital, right?
Yep. That was on my phone. Yeah.
You did that on your phone?
Yeah, I did that on my phone too. There's a little animated one too. If you scroll, I'm not sure which way you need to scroll. But I did, so you can do animated things on your phone where it will like record.
No one cares.
I got really into making, uplifting pieces of posters. But yeah, my phone. So if you look right, the green one, I'm pointing at my screen like an idiot. That's done with a Wacom on like a computer. So I could zoom in and zoom back out pretty easily. And that's an older piece. So I love how there's just my dog. There's like these, these creepy, terrible nightmare images, and then my dog with his face pressed to the oven. That pretty much sums up my life. Yep.
It's fun. Your dog.
Yeah.
So like these are like your very quick drawings that you do.
Yep.
Randomly.
Yeah, and then every once in a while, if I get like really upset about, not feeling creative or artistic enough, I will sit and draw something like that bottle that you can see. Yeah, that I drew on my phone. It's just I think it's a vanilla bottle. It is. It's from a coffee shop. So if I start to feel like I can't think of anything to do, I will, just do so. Hey, look, it's D.
That's my back. That's my back.
That's your body.
That's my body right there.
Yep.
Oh, look, there's my body.
Some of back parts. Oh, and when he was just a baby. Okay, and see, and this is always the problem is like, look at this. We got like 8 minutes left, dude.
Yeah.
Like this is where, like, I think for the future, like I keep telling everyone, thanks for being my set of guinea pigs on this. Like everybody who does this, like for the first couple months, is definitely going to get like a Dr. Sara Witty 2, like episode 2, as I'm learning everything.
That would be amazing.
But I'm totally dead serious about you doing bad history talks with Dr. Sara Witty.
I would love to do that because at one point in my life, because why not? I was like, who should I be? I don't know. Maybe I should be a comedian. And I actually had a neighbor who was a stand-up, and he would go out, and he would go to clubs, like maybe 3 different clubs every night. And he was like, you should come with me. When you start out, you do like 2 minutes. And I actually wrote a 2-minute set. And then we were getting ready to leave. And I was like, I have to go throw up now. I got so like nervous about like even the fucking idea of it that I just bailed. But I was like, I'm going to do comedy based on art history. And then Hannah Gadsby came out with both her show, Nanette and Douglas. And I was like, how could you, you brilliant bitch? I mean, just stole all my material. So I would not mind wading into the ring.
Well, will you show us, because like, I'm always down for a dollhouse. I know you got your dollhouse that you're working on, and then I haven't checked any of the comments, so
no questions, mostly just comments about you being fascinating.
Yes.
Why, thank you. I try. It's like the price I pay for, like
no one has questions. I'm watching comments, so take them out.
Yes. All right, show us your dollhouse and talk about this, because eventually at some point I would love to have a dollhouse show, because
I'm number 1 banking on that, and number 2 banking on the Jackie Platt stepping up and teaching me how to wire this baby.
Yeah, she's wiring mine too.
Yeah. So
how you want it done.
I'm going to try to back up without tripping over any of the things, just so you can get like a nice shot of it. It's pretty large. The roof is wrong. This is the problem with giving an art historian a dollhouse, is I know what's wrong with this thing. So Dee, you saw it from the beginning. When I got it, it was just wood. It's technically what's called a Georgian. It has some, issues, but I did all of the stonework. I did all the finishing on the windows.
So when you say you did the stonework, and I'm just going to underline this, is that you put material on it and carved out each tiny stone and then painted each individual stone.
Yes, I did. I painted every single stone. And because when the COVID started, I thought to myself, what am I going to do with myself? I'm very stressed out. And I remembered that my niece got this dollhouse when she was little, because I told my parents that she should have a fancy dollhouse, which she didn't care about at all. And so I talked her into this, and then I stole it from her. She's an adult now. She's like 21. I asked her. And so I started working on this. And to give you an idea of, it's kind of dark back here, but you can see that the stonework, that's what it looks like when it's not painted. And I built the chimney out of foam core and epoxy sculpt, and the 2 little pipes in there are the insides of dog poop bag rolls.
Use what you got.
Exactly. I was like, that was the other thing that was fun about it, is that I just kind of decided that I would just use what I had in my house. So like the roof, I ran out of tiles, so I put a giant hole in the roof. So you can see. I was
tiling a roof is really irritating.
It's horrible.
Put together any dollhouse. So I have 3 2.5 dollhouses. And the roof and those little tiles are one of the worst.
They're the worst. And I just I almost dropped myself. Now I'm very red. Oh well.
From the depths of hell, we have Dr. Sara Witty.
This is where I share my wisdom of dollhouses. I didn't realize that my parents were like, oh, it came with shingles for the roof. And I thought they meant like a sheet. It's not. It's literally one piece at a time. I think it took me 2 weeks to do the roof. And then they're not painted. So then I had to paint them after that. So everything I built it, and then I had to paint it. So now I'm almost done with the outside, and I'm about to start working on the inside. That's very exciting.
Okay, so we have just a few minutes left.
Yeah.
And let's see. One would be that talk about how you want people to talk to you out in the world. Yeah. Like if they want to ask you more questions, or if they want to like ask you about materials or anything else, like what's the best way to talk to you?
The best way is Facebook Messenger, honestly. Okay. And I accept messages from people who aren't my friends too, but most of the folks are my friends. But if people have any questions, they can just message me at any time. And I'm really big into learning a lot about materials. So if you have questions about like, thinners for acrylics, or how to do pour paintings, or the best materials for dollhouses, whatever, or bookbinding, I love like cataloging crap like that.
I think it's what you said earlier. You're like, I harvest. And I was like, that is so true. You are such a harvester. You're like, you just have this giant cornucopia. Like, you are Dr. Cornucopia.
I am Dr. Cornucopia. Oh my God, that's amazing. That's because it's like my brain is like, I'm bored, find out data. And then I just like dig through data all day. And I'm like, I guess I'll just watch YouTube for 5 days. Lately, I've been watching terrariums. So
I do too.
They're amazing.
Yes, they're so amazing.
I'm going to send you my favorite Japanese guys, because they make like, they make such good stuff.
Well, yes. If you're going to talk about it, you're going to have to show everybody now, like about the terrarium.
I will. If I can, I don't know if I can build them. They have like water pumps and stuff.
I mean, you can get the like just the enclosed ones in jars.
Totally.
They're just like moss or like small plants or something.
Right. I love those, but I also love the people who make them like out of sculpt. They sculpt them, and then they put like pumps in them, and then because at one point I thought about adding a pump to the dollhouse so that it had a running waterfall down the stairs.
Yes.
That's a little excessive, but I was like, I think they make pumps that small.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Right. They make everything.
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's see, what was I'm trying to think of how to end this, because like I want to keep talking, but we are like determined to keep this at an hour.
We got to be like professionals here. Like, we're done talking to each other.
Katrina has a question, but I'm going to have you answer her on your own.
Okay. Is it just on the Facebook?
Yeah, it's on the Facebook. Okay. And then Dr. Sara Witty, bad art history, or untrue art history, or 80% of this isn't real.
Just made this up. It's great.
And then you have to guess at the end.
Yes.
Like what is actually true.
You guys.
It's a test.
Yeah, this is where we quit, because Jackie just said
Dr. Witty.
Jackie just said the most brilliant shit I've ever heard. So that's like, stop at a high note. Right? Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much for like showing us all of your work and talking all the things. I feel like it's always the easiest to talk to you, because like I feel like I just like can't stop listening, where I'm like, yes. Also, just to put it down, is that I feel like you should totally do an art history of why, like, haunted houses and why you think a house is creepy.
Oh, I have like a whole theory about that. I'll do that. That'll be my first one.
So my I think you and I had a conversation, but like also maybe you should just add the wallpaper in there.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm taking notes, girl. I'm taking notes.
Because the wallpaper is one that I'm like determined. I'm like, I keep seeing wallpaper
Right?
every horror movie with women in it.
I think it's because of the yellow wallpaper story. That's my theory.
I don't even know what that is, but now I want to know.
Story ever. Just read it. It's super short. You can find it online.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's amazing. Super short.
Okay. I will do that.
I've read it. It's good.
Thank you, the amazing Jackie Platt,
Thank you,
for
Jack.
being my assistant.
Checking our like crazy eye in each other. Like
next week we're gonna have Alicia De La Cruz. So, and she does amazing beadwork and she makes her own nail polish.
oh, that's fucking amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
The first time I met her, I was like, "You can make nail polish?" Like, I feel
That's
so
God level. That's God level shit right there.
so.
She's overpowered. You'll have to destroy her.
Okay, I love you, Dr. Witty. I will see you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.